My name is KyleJ.
My name is Amanda Jenkins.
And my name is Jean-Marc Langlois. We're very excited to talk to you game developers and producers here today.
In Coalescence, a status-seeking engineer ventures outside of his solar system to prove himself, but crash lands on a foreign planet and must escape the man-machine amalgamations that inhabit it.
This science fiction story deals with how basing one's sense of self-worth off of external validation can be detrimental.
In this game, you play as Edmund Faust, an engineer living with his parents. Faust feels overshadowed and desperately wants to prove himself. At work, all of Faust's co-workers are promoted except for him, and he feels left behind. At home, he works on a personal project. He has an idea about body-altering technology that he believes will change the future and gain him fame and prestige if he's able to develop it. One day at work, he is denied a promotion yet again, and it pushes him to the brink of despair. That same night, he's motivated to make a breakthrough on his project, but realizes that he needs a power source from an alien planet, so he flies off in his spaceship.
Faust is so distraught and emotionally unstable that he crashes on an unknown planet. When he wakes up, he finds that this distorted figure with extra limbs is tearing off one of his arms and fusing it to itself. Nanobot technology has allowed for humans to merge with machines and with other humans, forming masses. Faust is saved by another mouse named Chimera. Chimera saves Faust by giving him a new prosthetic arm, and this technology amazes Faust. This serves as an introduction to the prosthetic mechanics of the game, using various bionic upgrades to power up Faust. After the adrenaline wears off, Faust is left hopeless and traumatized. He looks at a photo of his parents in his wallet and feels resentment. They made me feel like this. They made me come here. Wait till they see what I've found. Chimera sympathizes with Faust, as he is a scientist turned mass who was exiled by a previous lab partner.
Chimera decides to help Faust fix his ship, so they travel to Chimera's workshop. Upon arrival, they realize that Faust needs a strong power source to return home. Then, mysterious figures show up at Chimera's workshop, setting it ablaze. They are surprised to see a human, so they capture Faust and bring him to a prosthetics factory, where he wakes up and is interrogated by a mob boss, another mask. The player has multiple options to escape, giving some freedom of choice. At the end, Faust learns about the Babylonian heart, an everlasting power source coming from an ancient, enormous mass named Babel, and it has been stolen. He then finds Chimera destroying the prosthetics factory in revenge for his workshop. They exchange information and start heading towards their new goal.
After the player searches for the Babylonian heart by interrogating masses and following leads, Faust and Chimera emerge at a clearing. Once they arrive, instead of finding the Babylonian heart, they find an enormous mass towering over the mob boss from before. This mass's name is Yanis, and he's obviously the mob boss's superior. Yanis is threatening the mob boss, telling him, "You lost the factory, I can't believe you lose the factory and bring me here. And the Babylonian heart isn't here either." But at the last minute, the mob boss spots Faust and Chimera and points. It was them. Now confronted by Yanis, Faust and Chimera bluff that they know where the Babylonian heart is and that they can find it for him. Yanis, upset at the mob boss's incompetence, crushes him under his fist and tells them, "If you don't bring me to the Babylonian heart in one day, I'll kill you too." Desperation sets in once Faust and Chimera realize they don't know where the heart is and that they're being tracked by Yanis' henchmen.
Chimera wishes to get revenge on his former lab partner before Chimera and Faust get killed. He convinces Faust that killing his colleague and raiding his lab will give him enough energy to defeat Yanis. Faust empathizes with Chimera. They arrive at the lab. Chimera finds it odd to see how much the lab has changed. Defenses have been installed all around it, as if it's protecting something valuable. Chimera then confronts the lab partner, and Faust is disturbed by how violent Chimera becomes, and realizes how he is close to becoming violent and vengeful like this.
Faust then notices that the lab partner is holding the Babylonian heart. Faust rushes to stop Chimera before he does irreversible damage. And Chimera agrees to listen and stop for a moment, to listen to the lab partner. The lab partner confesses that he had stolen the heart, but that it had been depleted of all of its power, and that the true source of its power lies at the corpse of Babel itself. Before they can respond, Yanis bursts in with his men, angry. Chimera points at the lab partner and says, "We had found the heart." Yanis smites the lab partner, and the player is left with the choice whether to tell Yanis the truth about the hearts being depleted and face his unknown reaction, or flee to the corpse of Babel. For our reflection? Yeah. We were passionate about this project because we all wanted to write a story about how that reflects the societal pressure to succeed in a more fantastical way. It also serves as a warning against unregulated technological advancement.
For this project, we researched how neurotechnology could potentially take away our personal autonomy and make the people with access to it more powerful than the people that don't have access to it in the future. In our story, the tech that allows humans to become masses on the planet gives them lethal physical power over each other. Another thing about this story that is connected to neurotechnology is that it displays how neurotechnology could, like the commercialization of body enhancement technology, could feed into toxic societal expectations.
Originally, Chimera gave Faust a new human arm instead of a prosthetic arm. After research, we changed it to a prosthetic arm to represent Faust's feelings that he must change himself to meet his perceived expectations. Much like how commercialized neurotechnology would put pressure on individuals to change themselves based on societal expectations.
We want the viewing audience to take away that one can still strive to achieve goals without changing oneself, quite literally in our story, because of external expectations.
Okay, we'll take questions. I mean,
I'm wondering what so you said this was a game, right?
Yeah.
What's the main focus of the gameplay? Like, what genre of game do you imagine it to be?
I was thinking it could be a brawler game, but it also has cutscenes like a role-playing game. So you would upgrade a bionic arm on one side that would give Faust more power, but it would also it would be like a risk reward kind of thing where it gives Faust more power, but it makes him more unstable over time. Kind of because the arm was supposed to represent Faust changing himself to fit into a societal expectation, which puts a lot of pressure on him. Jack.
Kind of two-ish. Kind of like, so who is your target demographic with this game, and like, what kind of audience are you trying to appeal to with it?
We're thinking it'd be more of like a mature audience. We're thinking like a lot of the visual aspects of this game would take inspiration from body horror and other things. But we're also thinking, the game itself should have some like interesting gameplay and fun mechanics. So, yeah.
Jake.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to say that I think that your premise is incredibly imaginative, and I really love that it's sort of macabre and Cronenbergian, almost Lovecraftian in a sort of cosmic way. That's very refreshing to see. It really got my imagination going, and I was, having fun picturing all the things in my head. And it was very well described by you guys, so kudos.
Thank you. Mr. Blunt.
Yeah, in a game, so, you guys play games, technology exists now. In your game, what's the new thing that will make people want to play this game? Either the tech or what's new? What's going to be the hook?
I think it would be interesting to have a game. There are lots of games that brag about personal choice being a factor in how the story plays out, but oftentimes you make choices and they branch out and return to the same branches over and over. I like the idea of making a system where the game actually remembers what choices you've made and changes the story based on that in the future, which would, this could be one of many plot lines that plays out, and each one could have different themes.
So that doesn't exist now.
There are some games that have attempted it, but not many have done it in a way that I feel is successful.
PlayStation will be in touch with you.
Camilla.
I really like your visual elements, but I noticed that there are two distinct different styles. So for your visual element of your gameplay, which one do you think, if either of them, which one do you think is a game would lean more into? The more like monochrome, like red style, or like the original character that we saw? Like what kind of visual color palette feel vibe would we get from your game?
I think character portraits could have this kind of style to it with a black background and a monochrome color palette based on the character. I think that's cool. And if we wanted to try to go for something that looked like oil painting or something like that. Right? But in regards to the actual game world itself, I'm not entirely sure. Olivia?
So you'd mentioned that you were willing to make like multiple like story branches to come out, depending on the choice. I was wondering how many of those storylines would you be like willing to like make? Because like there could be like infinite amount of like storylines.
Depends on how much money you give.
Is there a secret storyline that you can only discover in a particular way?
Potentially. I think how it would work is the game would remember different details about whatever dialogue options that you've chosen before and use them in later scenes and just change later scenes based on that. So there would be lots and lots of possibilities. Like you'd have places where it's like, if the player said this in the past, then change it so that this happens. So it's really dynamic. And there's a lot of different possibilities, right? That doesn't necessarily mean like plot structure wise there will be many endings, right? But having the game remember details about what you said and tell it back to you could change the story in different ways. Like certain characters trust you less, or certain characters trust you more. Something like that. I don't know.
That also like dynamic style of our game that we're playing also kind of fits in with the art style, since it's like oil pastel. That stuff can be changed very easily, like in real life, like real painting and stuff like that. It just kind of mirrors each other and makes everything fit and be more interesting. John?
Me?
Yeah.
Another question I had is, do you imagine there to be like any sort of like post game or like maybe content for like the completionists out there?
For sure. I think in a game like this, you'd have different side quests that you go on, and based on which side quest you choose, that could, unlock new interactions with different characters and take the plot in different directions. Jake?
Sort of to elaborate, do you imagine, have you given any thought to the possibility of, a sequel or DLC or a spin-off or anything like that? Sort of an expansion of the world of the characters?
I think it'd be interesting to make a fighting game where you get to play as many different masses. That could be an extension of the game, but I don't think it would make sense to continue the narrative with the same style of game from the same perspective of characters in the world, because I feel like one game is enough to really establish the world, but there could be spin-off games that exist in the same world, but they're different, right? I feel like this game is meant to convey a narrative for the most part, as well as just being a game that you can play good. So you could make a fighting game spin-off of that. That would just be fun on its own.
To add on to what you were saying, one of our original ideas when coming up with this was to have sort of like an anthology where you have a choice of multiple protagonists, and you would play through different stories set on the same world. But we've only developed this one really. So
For the project, because otherwise it would be just humongous and like a lot to try to present in like 5 minutes.
There were a few more hands on this side of the room. I know, Lindsay, you had your hands up. You're waiting patiently.
Oh, the same question as Camilla.
Same
so,
question.
Yeah.
Okay. And Izzy, did you
I
have
had the
your...
same question as Jack.
Okay.
Sorry. I was trying to go like this way around.
That's okay. Your audience is highly engaged in your project, so that's a very exciting feeling, I'm sure. Last couple comments though, because we do have a couple more presentations today, so we'll go to Henry and then Olivia for this.
So you said there might be some combat in the game, right? Is it turn-based or not? I'm just curious.
I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think letting the player actually run around and hit things with the bionic arm would give you more of a feeling of power instead of it being a turn-based RPG.
Yeah.
That's just because I find those games really boring. I wouldn't want to play them.
If I remember correctly, you said like something about producers, like in the beginning. Would you be willing to like make this turn into like a movie or like a show of some kind that like game turn into like movie or something like that?
I think that like one of the it'd be difficult to translate the feeling of power from getting these like prosthetic enhancements in terms of like film compared to a game where the player can experience it firsthand and see the difference, and choose whenever they want to do that. And also the idea with branching storylines, constricting it to a show would mean we only have one narrative and there's no choices the player can make. So I think we keep it as a game.